Ah, Europe, the land of peace, prosperity, and, well, endless drama over who gets what piece of the land. But what would happen if all of them started to fight until only one remains? Well, the answer is total war. The country that would begin this total war would of course be Russia, who would try to use this situation to absolutely crush Ukraine. This wouldn't be too easy though, since the Ukraine would have many allies, something that Russia can't say for themselves. Ukrainian allies would be Poland and the entire Baltic, which would consist of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. They would all join the anti-Russian alliance, while the Red Menace would have to fight all on its own. Poland and Lithuania would mobilize their forces, preparing to capture the city of Kaliningrad, city that is miles away from the rest of their territories. However, the Russians living in Kaliningrad would know what is coming for them. They wouldn't be idle either, therefore getting ready to defend their motherland, whatever the price may be. Russia wouldn't want to lose this city, since it would be their key to the invasion from two sides, allowing them to quickly expand eastern. But in reality, it wouldn't be easy at all. They would try to send help through the Baltic Sea, but the Polish and the Baltic states would already take full control, not allowing anyone or anything to pass. Kaliningrad would be on its own. The devastating news would reach the troops, who would know that there is no way out. Their only choice would be to fight, and they would do exactly that. Since they knew both countries would try to close in on them, they would have a genius idea. Russian soldiers would want to focus all of their power on Lithuania, making them surrender, and rendezvous with the soldiers attacking from the east. With the attack starting, Lithuanian soldiers would be shocked with the intensity of the Russian attacks, and would have to fall back. Kaliningrad troops would advance forward, but things wouldn't look so good. Lithuania would stand their ground and wouldn't fail, therefore crushing Russian plans. With Polish troops coming from south, they would have to fight back and would pretty soon lose, with Kaliningrad falling too. Russia would be absolutely furious, ordering Belarus to join this conflict. The war would finally begin. Russia's war plan would be simple: attack the Baltic states from their own territory, and after that, from Belarus too, trying to make them all surrender one by one. They would do exactly that, making focused attacks on Estonia, pushing them back. Poland would immediately send their forces to help, but this would be their biggest mistake. Russian soldiers from Belarus would use this situation and break their supply line, encircling the entire Baltic forces. Another Polish unit would be sent to break their trap, but Belarus would anticipate that and would position their forces perfectly, now allowing a single soldier to pass. Baltic would be in huge trouble. Baltic forces would have nowhere to run and would try to make a last stand. However, they wouldn't be able to do a single thing, leading to Russia absolutely demolishing them and taking Estonia and Latvia. Lithuanian and Polish troops wouldn't be able to run away and would soon meet the same fate as their comrades, being destroyed from two sides. With them losing, Polish troops would try to free the rest of Lithuania, but it would be unsuccessful. Russian troops would advance even further, taking the whole Lithuania and reaching Kaliningrad. Poland and Ukraine wouldn't like that they are the only ones left and would know that they have to do something. Poland would send most of their soldiers to Kaliningrad, going fully into defensive mode. However, Russia would finally attack Ukraine, going hard and taking a huge win, seizing a small chunk of their territory. With Russians closing in, Ukrainian troops would decide not to run and would stand their ground at their capital city. The battle for Kiev would start, the battle that would decide the fate of this war. Ukraine would stretch their soldiers across the battlefield, with even help from the other side would come from. They would leave only one unit of soldiers on the border with Belarus, doing everything to defend Kiev. Russia would try to use this situation and push them from Belarus, but it wouldn't be that easy. Poland would still be in this war, and with them somewhat idle right now, they would send soldiers to help the Ukrainians, stopping this attack before it even happens. Huge battles would be ongoing in Ukraine, but soldiers wouldn't move a single inch. However, Russian soldiers would shock the enemy and would be able to push their way through the south. This would really shatter their position, since Russian forces would keep taking more of their territory. They would be able to nearly encircle them, and things wouldn't look good for Ukraine. A huge offensive would start, which would, after a long series of battles, completely demolish Ukraine, and Kiev would fall. The rest of the troops would scatter through the country, with some going to Poland, while some would be captured in the act of fleeing. One thing would be certain now: Ukraine completely fell. Poland would have to do something, but they wouldn't have a single chance against the Russian army. Their army would be ready to retake Kaliningrad, but Polish soldiers wouldn't want to move an inch. However, Russian soldiers would be unstoppable as they would march in, taking Kaliningrad back. Polish would send all of their soldiers to the border and would quickly try to find an ally. But it would already be too late, as Russians would take some of their soldiers and even stoop into their territory. With the enemy pushing even more day by day, and with no allies coming to help them, they would end up being destroyed once again. With them now under the Russian control, Russians would be the first victor in this war. However, their armies would lose a significant amount of soldiers due to the hard-fought battles, and they would have to lay low for now. The only thing they would do is persuade Belarus to officially join them, creating their plans for total domination over the European continent. Next country that would begin its conquest would be the Germans, who would want to take control once again. With their hunger for power growing once again, they would want to get revenge on France first, and would start preparing for them. However, they would again attack the Benelux states, who would all quickly start preparing to defend. Germans would shock everyone and prepare the strongest army in Europe in such a quick time, sending them all to the border. With a quick burst of attacks, Germans would be able to push all of them back in a classic German fashion, which would eventually end in Netherlands falling in a record amount of time. French soldiers would see this and would abandon their allies, getting their forces back to France, letting both Belgium and Luxembourg get demolished. The French would immediately send all of their soldiers to the border, having the army to parry or even beat the German army. However, Germans would have the advantage since Paris would be really close to the border. They would use that fact and would focus their attacks on that part, pushing French troops back. French soldiers would try to defend Paris, but the Germans would already push too deep. With a decisive fight happening, Germans would be able to overpower them and would step in Paris, taking it once again. The rest of their troops would try to regroup, and they would do exactly that. In the south of France, they would try to make a last stand and attack the enemy. At first, it would look like they would be succeeding, since the Germans would fall back. But soon, it wouldn't be like that. Germans would quickly form an offensive, which would completely tear through the French lines, and would end up with them defeated, allowing Germans to take their full territory. Germans would use this situation and would immediately ask Austria to join them. However, they would refuse and would send all of their available forces trying to defend. They wouldn't be able to do much, since German forces would overwhelm them and would push into their territory. Austrians would be able to shock them and prevent them from destroying them. With seeing this situation, Czech Republic would join in to help Austria, pushing into German territory. It would look like the Germans would finally lose, but it wouldn't be that easy. They would send all of their special soldiers, which would push the Czechs back into their territory. With them under control, they would be able to knock out Austria out of this war, which would eventually lead to the Czechs being defeated as well. It would look like nobody can stop the Germans. Ireland would see how Germany is dominating, and that would motivate them to mobilize their army and attack UK, wanting to get Northern Ireland back into their control. Since they wouldn't be expecting this attack, UK forces would be absolutely destroyed, letting Irish forces easily take over their territory, proclaiming Greater Ireland. However, UK would quickly act and would split their forces in two, sending one part to the north while the other one would go south of the Ireland. Since their army would be huge, they would attack hard from both sides, making the Irish army fall back and eventually beating them, reclaiming their territories. Scandinavia would be affected next, as Finland would start mobilizing their forces first, sending it to the border with Sweden. Sweden wouldn't wait long, as they would answer their attack, sending their troops to defend. However, since Finland would have a lot more forces, they would be able to break the Swedish defense, eventually pushing them back. Sweden would try to make a last stand, but the Finnish would just be too strong, leading to the downfall of the Swedish forces. Finland wouldn't stop there and would continue westward, attacking Norway. Norway wouldn't have much soldiers and would be forced to defend, but it wouldn't be easy. They wouldn't let the enemy pass and would think of a genius idea to beat them. They would call both Germans and Russians to join this battle, promising them land. With them both accepting, Germans would easily push into Denmark, taking it before they can act. Russians, however, would tear through the Finnish territories like it's butter. Finland would be absolutely devastated, as their soldiers would be destroyed by the Russian troops. Norway would think they are safe, but something crazy would happen next.